And he was famous in history for defeating his enemy not by beating him on the battlefield, but by wearing him down in delaying tactics. In other words, he would wear his enemy down by refusing to make a frontal engagement. The Fabians selected him as their symbol or the symbolic name on purpose. They objected to the Leninists, not on the basis of their goals of collectivism, because they agreed with that. They were saying to the Leninists, you people are stupid, you're going about it in the wrong way. You're trying to conquer the world and make a new world order based on the model of collectivism through force and violence and bloodshed and quick revolution. That's the wrong way, they said. The proper way is patient gradualism. They said, let's follow the motto or the tactics of Quintus Fabius and delay so there's no confrontation, and drag it out over a long period of time, and instead of confronting your enemy head on, we will infiltrate his institutions. We will move our people into his government agencies, into his educational institutions, and into his charitable organizations, into his corporations, and we'll gradually convert the world. Now, who are the Fabians? Well, when they were formed, of course, there were such well-known people as Arnold Toynbee, the famous historian, George Bernard Shaw, H.G. Wells.
Wells' last book of prophecy was the shape of things to come. His final vision was dark but hopeful, full of untold violence, but also the possibility of enlightenment and change. Writing in 1933, Wells predicted an apocalyptic world war.
All of the cities and all the infrastructures and everything are destroyed, and so what you're going to get are little pockets of surviving humanity. Feudal societies, basically, enslaving their peoples.
But out of this, Wells prophesied a new consciousness would emerge, spearheaded by a visionary elite that would take control of the weapons of war and create a world state.
These airmen come and they stop this fighting. I mean, they're able to pacify the people and to lead them, literally, to a new world where they build a new state of technological wonders.
By the middle of the 21st century, Wells envisioned a peaceful world, liberated from old hatreds and adorned with scientific marvels.
This man's not sleeping. He's dead. Dead and his world dead with him, and a new world beginning.
Plato described the whole technique. Today we call it a form of indoctrination, predictive programming. Which means that through fiction, or through when you're enjoying yourself, through being entertained, that when you're under the cover, your sensor part of your mind is not working. And when it's not working, you're unaware that you're being downloaded like a computer. And so all the little emotional techniques that you use, and you're identifying with the hero or the female with the heroine, and there's people in between these days, and all that kind of stuff. Once you start identifying with the characters, they've got you, because they can take you anywhere, no matter what that character does, because as long as you identify this much with them, they can take you that much.
Our job is only beginning. For now, we have to put the world in order. It will be a long and complicated struggle, but we have the unity of a common order and a common knowledge. This is how I conceive our plan of operations. First, the roundup of brigands, that last dismal vestige of ancient predatory soldiery, the last would-be conquerors. Then settle, organize, advance, this zone, then that, and at last, wings over the world. And the new world begins.
Anyway, I'm getting tired though, guys. If anyone has any singular questions or anything else they want to say, I
mean, I'm talking, I'm discussing something, how that can be irrelevant towards the transition to...
I've been working with the Technocrats Incorporated here in America, and I see in his latest lecture, Jacques Fresco mentions them briefly and says that their scope is too limited. I would agree with that. I gotta say though, in general, if the Zeitgeist movement really starts to pick up, I guarantee you the Technocrats will be behind you. I mean, they're not continentalists, but that's not what their minds really are. That's just old plans from the 1920s where they really didn't have that much form of communication with other countries or whatever.
Centuries ago, in primitive times, before the dawn of civilization, there were things that would be inconceivable to us today. Such things as poverty.
The movie industry is there to indoctrinate you into possibilities which you swallow as possibilities, and then they actually come out in reality. This technique has been used very effectively since the BBC, in fact, first started up as a radio station for World War I.
Although there was actually land and food in abundance, some starved, because unlike our perfect society, they were unable or unwilling to balance population to consumption.
We do a survey of what the carrying capacity of the Earth is, and that tells us how many people the Earth can support. If you exceed that, you're going to have malnutrition, disease, and territorial disputes. Do you understand that? Yes. So many acres can support so many people. If you put more than what the ground can support, you're going to have disease, malnutrition, and problems.
So how do you make sure that you don't exceed the limits of the resources?
Well, the survey committee tells us how many hospitals we need.
Educate people.
They have to be educated.
But is it going to be done by birth control or euthanasia?
You have to educate people.
Right, well, educating people doesn't stop people from producing people. There's lots of jobs to that big.
We show them a film called Dynamic Equilibrium in Nature. If you produce more people than land can support, these are the problems you're going to have. Now, if they don't seem to understand that, that's another problem.
You have learned, Winston, now you must understand. You have read the book, Goldstein's book, parts of it at least. The program it sets forth is nonsense. The secret spread of knowledge, a proletarian rebellion, the overthrow of the party. It could not happen in 1,000 years or 1,000,000. I know. I wrote the book.
After Orwell published 1984, in June 1949, he sent a copy to Huxley. And Huxley wrote him a long letter saying how much he admired the book, and they entered into a literary dialogue about which vision was more compelling and more relevant. Huxley maintained that it was far more likely that the future would consist of totalitarian dictators who would realize that the most effective way to continue to rule would be to inculcate a method whereby we would love our servitude.
In the past, we can say that all revolutions have essentially aimed at changing the environment in order to change the individual. I mean, there's been the political revolution, the economic revolution, in the time of the Reformation, the religious revolution. All these aimed, as I say, not directly at the human being, but at his surroundings, so that by modifying the surroundings you did achieve, at one remove, an effect upon the human being. Today, we are faced, I think, with the approach of what may be called the ultimate revolution, the final revolution, where a man can act directly on the mind-body of his fellows.
Joy comes from that bliss of connectedness. That's our God spirit. That's that side of ourselves that really feels it. And you can feel it deep inside you. It's this amazing, wonderful feeling. And you know it when you get it. You don't get it from money. You get it from connection.
Have you ever cried to a movie? I am still on the verge of me falling in tears. It angers me. It saddens me. I've never been in this emotional stress ever. Because this video will change your life. It's called Zeitgeist Addendum.
Get out there. Get the troops ready. Yeah, we can educate. But first, let's dance. Get people in the mood.
I would like to see all the members of the movement wearing, you know, the Zeitgeist movement shirts and, you know, putting the Zeitgeist movement bumper stickers on their cars.
When I came back to the United States, I decided that if you could use propaganda for war, you could certainly use it for peace.
I'm inclined to think that the scientific dictatorships of the future, and I think there are going to be scientific dictatorships in many parts of the world, will be probably a good deal nearer to the Brave New World pattern than to the 1984 pattern. They will be a good deal nearer, not because of any humanitarian qualms in the scientific dictators, but simply because the Brave New World pattern is probably a good deal more efficient than the other. As dictators become more and more scientific, more and more concerned with a technically perfectly running society, they will be more and more interested in the kind of techniques which I imagined and described from existing realities in Brave New World.
While we have been perfectly conditioned to want only what we have, and to have only what we want, and are therefore always happy, the uncivilized ancients were prey to destructive emotions, and even collecting into groups called families, a pervasively immoral concept of pre-civilized times.
We're behind you. The technocrats will be behind you if it catches on worldwide.
There is no opposition to the technocrats, as Jacques will state. The only problem that Jacques sees with the history of the technocrats are some racial things that occurred when he was in their establishment. The technocrats really didn't come up with much of a blueprint, from what I understand, and I would love to see the technocrats. It doesn't matter what we call any of this stuff, you know. Technocracy does have a history that can be loaded with certain concepts, and that's an unfortunate reality with any organization that has a history, of course. But nevertheless, I'm happy to hope that technocrats will come forward and we can get rid of these names and lines and try to find a collective focus to move forward.
User disconnected from your channel.
By all means. So I'm glad to hear that.
Por ejemplo, estamos hablando de la disminución de la población y eso lo propuso Malthus en el año 1800. Y todas las nuevas, todos los neofilósofos, los filósofos que van marcando paradigmas en su etapa, lo han planteado. El problema es que cada vez que se plantea la desaparición de los políticos, los que llegan son los milicos. Ese es el problema. Entonces, ¿qué modalidad o viable? Porque los políticos son primos y hermanos de los medios de comunicación. Ahí tenéis una familia poderosísima e insanciable.
A permanent site for the United Nations World Capitol is also approved. From 42nd Street between First Avenue and the East River in New York, the future skyscraper headquarters will occupy 6 blocks, running north to 48th Street. This $8.5 million tract is the gift of John D. Rockefeller Jr. and solves a difficult problem for the UN.
One of the major aspects of collectivism is that it's based on the principle that the individual must be sacrificed if necessary for the greater good of the greater number. You'll find that under all